So when they found the mummy, they immediately took the mummy down to a forensics team that started investigating, trying to figure out what was going on, and they ended up pulling a ticket and a coin out of the mouth of the mummy. The coin was a penny from 1924, and the ticket was from the Museum of Crime. It was a wax museum that Elmer McCurdy had been placed in, and they went back and checked the records, and they were actually able to string together all of these events. So all of these events, all completely 100% true and documented with all of these different companies, and this is the story of Elmer McCurdy. This is what happened to his life, to his death, to his body after he died. In 1976, Universal Studios was shooting an episode of The $6 Million Man at a theme park in Long Beach, California. The Universal crew was preparing a room in the theme park to shoot a scene. And this room was a ride. It was like one of those little train track rides where you go around and there are scary items like monsters and mummies and things like this in there to scare, little kids and teenagers and things like that. The crew came across this old, decrepit, like mannequin mummy looking thing and decided they didn't want it in the shot. So one of the crew members went up to the mannequin, took it down, and when he did, the arm broke off. He immediately looked down and a bone was sticking out of the arm. This was not a mannequin, this was a real dead body. So this is the body of Elmer McCurdy. Elmer McCurdy was this really terrible outlaw. And by terrible, I don't mean that he was a murderer and he was this horrible person, although he was an outlaw, but he was just really bad at being an outlaw. On several occasions, Elmer McCurdy tried to rob banks. He would break into the bank, find the safe, line the safe with nitroglycerin, and try to blow the front door off of the safe. The problem is, he always used too much, and what he ended up doing was not only blowing off the front, but he would completely destroy any of the money that was inside, and it got so hot on 2 occasions that he actually melted any silver that was inside to the inside of the safe. So it was completely unusable. In one case, there was over $4,000 in the safe, and he was actually only able to get away with $450. One time he also tried to rob a train, only to find out once he got on the train that it was actually the wrong train. He ended up robbing the passengers on the train and went after the bar and ended up getting $46 and a couple bottles of whiskey. There was a newspaper at the time that actually called it the smallest amount of money that had ever been taken in a train robbery. This ended up being his last foray into train robbing, as afterwards he went to a barn, he ended up getting drunk, and the authorities were after him. The authorities surrounded the barn in the middle of the night. They waited for him to wake up the next morning. When he did, he looked outside. He saw that they were out there. He knew what was about to happen, that he was going to be arrested. He didn't want to go to jail. He was also hungover, probably partially still drunk. But anyway, he pulled out his pistol. He started shooting at the officers. He said, "You're never going to take me alive." And they obliged. They turned around, they shot him. So this is the end of Elmer McCurdy's life, but basically the beginning of our story. After McCurdy's death, he was taken to Pawhuska, Oklahoma, where a mortician embalmed his body with an arsenic-based embalming fluid. They typically did this for people who had no next of kin or no known next of kin, and it would preserve their bodies for a really long time, waiting for their next of kin or family members or somebody to show up and take the body. However, in this particular case, the mortician did an excellent job with this body. He embalmed it and put on the makeup, dressed him up, and was really proud of his work. And because of that, he thought, well, if nobody's going to come pick up this body, I can put it on display, and maybe some people will like the artistry of my work, and they'll pay some money to see it. So that's what he did. He put the body out on display, showing his work, trying to get new customers, and people would actually come by and put coins in the mouth of the dead body to give him a tip to say, you know, you did a really good job, here's some money for it. The mortician put this body on display and was making some money off of it, and would put signs up like and naming the body like the bandit that would never give up, the Oklahoma outlaw, the embalmed bandit, and things like this. And the body actually ended up becoming kind of famous in the area. On October 7th, 1916, Aver and Wayne McCurdy actually showed up at the mortuary in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, claiming to be Elmer McCurdy's brothers, and that they were there to take the body and they were going to take it back to California and give it a proper burial. So they paid the mortician any fees that were left over after the money that he had made, and they took the body and left. So the problem is these guys weren't actually related to Elmer McCurdy in any way whatsoever. They were actually the owners of a traveling carnival show, and they had heard by his body becoming famous for sitting outside of this mortuary. They had heard about it and decided that they wanted the body and that they could put it in their carnival show and that they could make money off of it. So that's exactly what they did. They didn't think that this mortician would give away the body to anyone other than relatives, so they posed as relatives, they took the body, they put it in their carnival show, they started traveling, taking Elmer McCurdy's body all across America and had it posed in a coffin, and they also started giving it names. As this went on throughout the years, the body became more and more decrepit and old, and it shrank, and it got really small, and it started looking like a mummy. It started mummifying. So in 1933, this carnival show was shutting down. They were ready to get rid of the body, and they sold it to a studio in Hollywood that was shooting a story about the evils of drug addiction. They used Elmer McCurdy's body as an example of what would happen to you if you overdosed on drugs. They used a body that had been dead for 20 years and had basically mummified to show the dangers of using drugs. So over the years, this body was passed around to different places, to carnivals, traveling carnival shows, where he toured the U.S. He was in wax museums. He was all over the place. And he was just kind of this famous mummy that everybody was lending out and selling so people could go and see this body, and the people who had it could make money off of it. In 1967, Elmer McCurdy's body was in another movie called She-Freak. Soon after this, in the late 1960s to early 1970s, Elmer McCurdy's body was purchased by this theme park and placed in the Laugh in the Dark Funhouse. And there the body remained until 1976, when the Universal Studios crew came through. The guy grabbed it, the arm broke off, and he saw the bone sticking out, and it had been lost through time that this was actually a real body, and everybody at this point thought that it was completely a prop. It didn't look real at all, just looked like a fake mannequin, and that's what they thought it was until that arm broke off and he saw the bone sticking out. So when they found the mummy, they immediately took the mummy down to a forensics team that started investigating, trying to figure out what was going on, and they ended up pulling a ticket and a coin out of the mouth of the mummy. The coin was a penny from 1924, and the ticket was from the Museum of Crime, was a wax museum that Elmer McCurdy had been placed in. And they went back and checked the records, and they were actually able to string together all of these events. So all of these events that I've just told you were all documented. The sale of Elmer McCurdy and the lending him out and everything was all completely 100% true and documented with all of these different companies. And this is the story of Elmer McCurdy. This is what happened to his life, to his death, to his body after he died. Not only that, but actually when he was buried afterwards, he was buried right next to another outlaw that he had been displayed next to in one of the traveling carnival shows. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, leave comments, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.